The moment she shoved my daughter's wheelchair off the curb, I knew everything was about to change, not just for us, for her. My name is Renee Calloway. I'm a registered nurse, a single mother, and for the past 3 years, a resident of Maplewood Estates, a quiet, tree-lined community where the Homeowners Association promised harmony, dignity, and pride of neighborhood. Those were their words, not mine. My daughter, Lily, is 9 years old. She has spina bifida. She uses a wheelchair. She laughs too loud at her own jokes. She loves butterflies more than anything in this world, and she has never, not once in her entire life, done a single thing to deserve what happened to her. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning. We moved into Maplewood Estates in the spring. It was a fresh start. After my divorce, after the hospital transfers and the medical bills and the long nights where I lay awake wondering how I was going to hold it all together, Maplewood felt like hope. The house was small but perfect. It had a ramp. It had a garden. It had a wide front porch where Lily said she wanted to drink lemonade every single morning. We hadn't even finished unpacking when she showed up. Sandra Pruitt, HOA president, 5 feet 2 inches of beige blazer, clipboard energy, and the kind of smile that never quite reaches her eyes. "Welcome to Maplewood Estates," she said, standing at my door, looking past me into the house. "I'm Sandra. I run the HOA. I just wanted to introduce myself and go over a few community guidelines." I invited her in. I offered coffee. I was trying to be neighborly. She didn't sit. She stood in my hallway with her clipboard and her pen, and she started talking about lawn heights and fence colors and the acceptable placement of outdoor decor. And then she looked at the ramp, the wheelchair ramp I'd had professionally installed, the one I'd submitted all the proper permits for, the one I needed so my daughter could enter and exit her own home. "This is going to need HOA approval," Sandra said. "I submitted all the paperwork," I told her. "I followed every step." She smiled again. That smile. "We'll review it," she said, and then she left. The review took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of Lily having to be carried in and out of the house by me, alone, at the end of 12-hour nursing shifts, because Sandra Pruitt had decided our ramp was a community aesthetics concern. We were eventually approved, but it was just the beginning. Over the next several months, I received 14 violation notices. 14. Lily's butterfly garden, planted in our backyard, was cited as unauthorized landscaping. Her therapy swing, installed in the same backyard, was an unapproved structure. The small American flag we put on our porch for the 4th of July was cited as a non-standard display item. Every single notice came from Sandra Pruitt. I appealed each one. I documented everything. I kept every email, every letter, every certified mail receipt. I was meticulous because I'm a nurse. Documenting is what we do. But Sandra had something I didn't: time and spite. She had been running Maplewood Estates for 11 years. She had allies on the board. She had the kind of institutional power that only comes from digging in so deep that people are afraid to challenge you. And for reasons I still don't entirely understand, she had decided that Lily and I were a problem to be solved. The incident with the butterfly garden hit Lily the hardest. We had spent an entire weekend planting it together. Lily directing from her wheelchair, me digging and watering and laughing while she made up names for each flower. "That one's Princess Marigold," she'd say. "And that one's Captain Lavender." 3 weeks later, Sandra sent a work crew to our backyard while I was at work. Lily was home with our neighbor, Mrs. Delgado, when the men came with their tools. They tore it all up. Every flower, every carefully arranged stone, every little handmade plant marker Lily had painted herself. Mrs. Delgado called me at the hospital. I could hear Lily crying in the background, not the frustrated kind of crying, the kind that comes from somewhere deep, the kind that breaks a mother's heart clean in two. I left my shift early. My supervisor understood. When I got home, Lily was sitting in the middle of the ruined garden in her wheelchair, holding the broken stem of one of her flowers, completely silent. She wasn't crying anymore. She was just still. I sat down in the dirt beside her and held her hand, and I promised her we would fix it. I also promised myself something else. I started filing complaints with the county, with the state housing office, with the ADA compliance office. Because here's something Sandra didn't know about me. I didn't just work in the hospital. I had spent the last 4 years serving as a patient rights advocate, working closely with our hospital's legal team, filing discrimination claims on behalf of vulnerable patients. I knew how to build a case, but what I didn't know, what I couldn't have predicted, was how far Sandra Pruitt was willing to go. It was a Saturday morning in October, the kind of bright, crisp fall day that makes you feel like the world is clean and full of possibilities. Lily had been asking for weeks to go to the Maplewood Autumn Festival, a small community event held in the neighborhood park. just 3 blocks from our house. I pushed her wheelchair along the sidewalk while she chatted happily about the apple cider she wanted and the games she was going to play. She was wearing her favorite yellow jacket. She had butterfly clips in her hair. We turned the corner onto Sycamore Lane, and there was Sandra Pruitt, standing at the entrance to the festival with 2 members of the HOA board. She saw us, and something shifted in her face. "I'm sorry," Sandra said, stepping forward with her clipboard. "Residents with open HOA violations are not permitted to participate in community events." I stopped walking. "What?" "It's in the Community Guidelines, Section 14, Paragraph 3, residents with unresolved violations." "Lily doesn't have any violations," I said. "She's 9 years old." "The household has violations," Sandra said. "That includes all members." I looked at the crowd around us, families, neighbors, people who had watched this woman terrorize us for months, most of them looking away now, pretending to be very interested in the pumpkin display. "She just wants to go to the festival," I said quietly. I wasn't yelling. I was using every ounce of professional training I had to keep my voice calm. "She's a child, in a wheelchair. She's been looking forward to this for weeks." Sandra looked down at Lily, actually looked at her, and said, "Rules apply to everyone." I felt my daughter go still beside me. The chatting stopped. The brightness in her face dimmed. "Mommy," Lily whispered, "it's okay. We can go home." Those words, those 4 words from a 9-year-old trying to protect her mother from pain. Something inside me went very, very quiet. "We're going to the festival," I said. "Then I'll have you removed," Sandra said. And that's when it happened. Sandra Pruitt reached out. Whether she meant to push or just gesture, I will never know, and frankly, I no longer care. But her hand made contact with the handle of Lily's wheelchair, and the wheelchair rolled, off the edge of the curb, into the street. The next 5 seconds were the longest of my life. I lunged. I caught the chair before it fully tipped. Lily screamed. People around us gasped. A man from across the street started running toward us. Lily was shaking. Her left arm had struck the armrest hard when the chair lurched. She was crying, real crying now, frightened and in pain. I knelt in the street and held my daughter, and my hands were shaking, and I was making sounds I didn't recognize as my own voice. And then I heard something else. Sirens. 2 police cruisers pulled up within minutes, followed not long after by a 3rd vehicle, an unmarked car. Out of it stepped a man in a suit I recognized immediately. Captain Dennis Hargrove, chief of the Maplewood County Police Department, my brother-in-law. My late husband's older brother, who had been checking in on Lily and me every week since Marcus died 2 years ago, who had been quietly watching the situation in our neighborhood escalate, who had received, just 2 days earlier, a full packet of documentation I had compiled over 15 months. Sandra Pruitt didn't know any of this. How could she? I had never talked about my family in this neighborhood. I had never mentioned Dennis. I had never played that card because I had wanted to fight this the right way, through proper channels, through documentation, through the law. But the moment my daughter's wheelchair rolled into the street, the proper channels became the immediate present. Dennis walked up to me first. He looked at Lily. He looked at the arm she was cradling. He looked at me for one long, steady moment. Then he turned to Sandra Pruitt. "Ma'am," he said, "I'm going to need you to stay right where you are." Sandra blinked. "Excuse me? Do you know who I am? I'm the president of the Maplewood Estates HOA. "I know exactly who you are," Dennis said. An ambulance arrived. The paramedics checked Lily. A hairline fracture in her forearm. Small, they said. Painful, but it would heal. It would heal. I repeated those words to myself like a prayer. What happened next unfolded over the following days, but let me tell you what it looked like from the outside. Sandra Pruitt was taken in for questioning that afternoon. Multiple witnesses, including the man who had run across the street, a retired teacher named Gerald Moss, who had his phone out and had been filming for the last 4 minutes of the confrontation, gave statements. The footage circulated online before the sun went down. The ADA violations I had filed were formally escalated to the Department of Justice. It turned out that Sandra, over the course of her 11-year HOA presidency, had issued discriminatory violations to 4 other families with disabled members. She had denied reasonable accommodation requests. She had weaponized community rules against the most vulnerable residents while looking the other way for her favorites. A full audit of the HOA's financial records, something the county could now compel given the investigation, revealed that Sandra had been approving her own renovation projects with community funds without board disclosure, more than $40,000 over 6 years. She was removed from the HOA presidency by emergency board vote within 72 hours. She was charged with misappropriation of funds, abuse of authority, and 1 count of reckless endangerment of a child. She lost her position as a compliance officer at the regional property management company where she had worked for 18 years, because it turns out that when your face is on the local news connected to a discrimination investigation and a child injury, employers tend to notice. The HOA itself paid to have Lily's butterfly garden restored. Not just restored, expanded. New raised planters, accessible pathways, a small bench where Lily could sit with her friends. The board sent a letter of formal apology. Lily named the new section of the garden the Brave Garden. She said it was for flowers that got knocked down and came back stronger. I didn't correct her. I don't think she was only talking about flowers. On the morning the construction crew finished, I took Lily out to see it. The sun was doing that golden hour thing where everything looks like it's lit from the inside. She sat in her wheelchair at the edge of her garden and she was quiet for a long moment, the way she gets sometimes when something is too big for words. Then she looked up at me and said, "Mommy, Captain Lavender made it." One small purple flower, somehow still alive through everything, standing in the corner of the original bed. I don't cry easily. Nurses learn to hold things in. But I sat down in the grass beside my daughter's wheelchair and I let it out. All of it. 15 months of violation notices and sleepless nights and keeping my voice steady and building a case, 1 document at a time, and carrying my child into her own home and watching her face fall and promising her it would be okay. I let all of it go. She put her small hand on my shoulder. "It's okay, Mommy," she said. "I told you Captain Lavender was brave." Some people look at a woman like Sandra Pruitt and think she's just a petty bureaucrat, someone drunk on the smallest sip of power, and maybe that's true. But to the people in her path, to the families with disabled children, to the single mothers, to the people who just wanted to live quietly in their homes, she was something more than petty. She was a wall. She was a door that wouldn't open. She was the voice that says you don't belong here. And sometimes, in this world, the only way to deal with a wall is to document every crack. Build your case, know your rights, and wait for the sirens. They always come.